In this video, I will teach you how to complete the square. It's a way of writing a trinomial and rewriting it as a binomial squared. So I'm going to show you how to do that. All right, before we can complete the square, we need to lay the foundation a little bit. What is x plus 1 times x plus 1? So look, I'm going to jump over here and do it over here first for a moment. If I wanted to do x plus 1 times x plus 1, all right, notice it's the same thing twice. Then if I did it like a little bit the long way, I would simply do the distributive property twice. So first I would multiply x times everything. X times x is x squared, and then x times 1 is x. And then I would do the distributive property again with the 1. So 1 times x is x, and 1 times 1 is 1. But then what happens is right here we have like terms. So I'm going to bring down the x squared, but x plus x is 2x. And then I have the plus 1. So there's one little shortcut that we could do if we wanted to. If I see that I have the same thing twice, if I look at this, the number 1, I'm just going to wind up doubling it for the middle term. So for example, let's say this had been, I'm just making up something else. Say if I had x plus 3 times x plus 3. All right, to save a little bit of time with this whole double distributive property, combining like terms business, I could do it a little bit faster if I think to myself, the middle term is just going to be double this number. So of course I'm going to have x squared, all right, because x times x. Of course I'm going to have 9 because of 3 times 3, all right, that part's obvious. But the middle term is just going to be double this. So I'm going to end up with 6x. It's just a little bit quicker. All right, so anyway, we saw that the answer to problem number 1 was x squared plus 2x plus 1. But now we know that we could double this for the middle term. All right, let's jump over to problem number 2. Okay, so x plus 8 squared is the same thing as x plus 8 times x plus 8. So of course we're going to have x squared because of x times x. Now the middle, we're just going to double this. We're using the shortcut this time. So this is going to be 16x plus. And then the last term, we're just doing 8 times 8. So that's going to be 64. All right, so it's all about shortcuts. Let's go back to problem number 3. Okay, now, here's where we complete the square. You're going to see me use the following phrase over and over again. I'm going to say half the middle, and then I'm going to say squared. Half the middle squared. So looking at this problem, in the middle here I have a 9. You know, I could think of it as negative 9 if I wanted to, but it doesn't matter because when you square things, everything becomes positive. So half the middle. Half of 9 is just 9 over 2. I don't want a decimal right now. So half the middle is 9 over 2. If I take that and I square it, that's going to give me 81 over 4. So that's what's going to go right here. So this is going to be 81 over 4, right? Half the middle squared. Okay, now, back here, see how I have a negative? I know this binomial is going to be minus because of that. And the number that goes here is going to be half the middle. So see the 9 over 2? I'm just going to have my 9 over 2 just like that. All right, let's practice that. I know that was a lot to take in. But remember, half the middle squared. So first of all, see how this is a plus? This is going to be a plus. Okay? half the middle. Half the middle is 9. So I'm going to have a 9 right here. Now over here, it's going to be half the middle squared. So this is going to be plus 81. All right? So half the middle and then squared. So let's look at number 5. See how it's negative? This is definitely going to be negative. These always match. What's half of the middle? 7. Now, we have to do half the middle squared to complete the square. So if I square this, I'm going to get 49. It's always plus, because even negative 7 squared is positive 49. So I'm going to put plus 49 right there. Half the middle squared. Okay? So what is half the middle? Half of this is 32. So I'm going to have plus 32 right here. And then over here, this should be 32 squared. I don't actually know that off the top of my head. Check it out, 32 squared. 1,024. So this should be 1,024. All right, take a look at number 7. Uh-oh. This one's a little bit different. So this time they're giving us the final number. So this has to be this number squared. So this must be 6. All right, because 6 squared is 36. So I know that. Now, the 6 has to be half of the middle. Okay, or looking at it the other way, when we first started this lesson, we knew that the middle would be double this. That's probably a better way to think of it. So the middle is going to be 12x, because it has to be double this. Okay, half and double. Okay, let's do that again. Well, this is the same. So I see the 36, so this must be a 6, and this must be a 12. But because this is minus, I know this is going to be a minus. That's the only thing that changes. Okay, now we're completing the square. We're just going to complete the square. Completing the square, technically, as soon as I fill in this number, as soon as I put 49, that's completing the square. I'm filling in the number that it takes in order to have it equal a binomial squared. But putting in the 49, this is completing the square. Filling in the blank is completing the square. So we're just going to do that and we're going to stop. We don't have to actually solve the problem. We're just practicing how you complete the square. Now, remember this phrase that I said I would use over and over again. I'm going to write it one more time. Half the middle squared. Half the middle squared. The third number has to be half the middle squared. Now, half of the middle is 13. All right? Half of the middle is 13. And then 13 squared is 169. Okay? So this third number needs to be 169, not 50. So here's what we have to do to complete the square. The first thing I want you to do is move this number out of the way by subtracting 50 from both sides. So minus 50 minus 50. Okay, that's going to leave us with x squared plus 26x. Leave a space here, and that's equal to negative 50. Okay, now is when we complete the square. We're going to do half the middle squared. Half of this is 13. 13 squared is 169. Okay, so that's why I'm going to put plus 169. Now, when you complete the square, you need to do it on both sides of the equation to keep the balance. This is the most common mistake. A lot of students will put 169 here, and they'll forget to put it over here. So we need to add 169 to both sides of the equation so it keeps the balance. Okay? So now the whole point of completing the square is to allow us to rewrite this as a binomial squared. So for another minute, I'm going to show this extra step. If I were to factor this, this is going to factor as x plus 13 times x plus 13. Right? You can see where the 13 is coming from. It's the old half of the middle part. All right? 13 times 13 is 169. Now, what's this? This is going to be 119. So the beauty of this is that we can write it even more simply as x plus 13 squared. And that's really the point, is to write it this way. So this is as far as we need to go for this lesson. Okay? Later we will learn how to keep going and solve the equation, but not today. Okay? All right, I guess that was it for number 9. So now, number 10. In order to do the process that we're doing, we need this number to be gone. So the first thing I'm going to do is I will divide everything by -2. So I'm going to divide by -2 everywhere. So look what happens. I'm going to wind up with x squared minus 10x plus 5. And 0 divided by anything is still 0. So now I have this. Okay? Now, this 5 is not the correct number that completes the square. Half the middle is 5. 5 squared is 25. This is not the right number. So what I want you to do is to move it away by subtracting 5 from both sides. Get it out of there. Get it out of the way. So that's going to leave me with x squared minus 10x, leave a space, is equal to -5. Now, into this space is where I'm going to complete the square. The way I complete the square is I do half the middle squared. Half of this is 5. Okay? And then 5 squared is 25. So that's the number that completes the square. So I'm going to put plus 25. And please, please remember to put it on the left and the right-hand side of the equation. So that's how you complete the square. Okay? Now, the point of picking this number is to make it so that if I were to factor this, it will factor as the same thing twice. So this is going to factor as x minus 5 times x minus 5. Okay? The minus comes from the -10. All right? And you know it's going to be 5 because 5 times 5 makes 25. As a shortcut, you could just look at the number that you're squaring. See how we did half the middle, and that was 5? That number shows up in the parentheses. Anyway, this is going to equal 20. So the final answer for number 10 is going to be x minus 5 squared is equal to 20. Okay, that's the final answer for number 10. Why is it skipping around? All right, anyway, number 11. Okay, let's be very careful about how we do this. I really want my x squared to be positive, which it is, so I'm going to add 5x to both sides to move it over to be with the x squared. All right, so I'm adding 5x to both sides, plus 5x. So that is going to give me 0 is equal to x squared plus 5x. Notice how I put it in the middle. All right, it's got to go in order. And then is the minus 10. Okay. Now, I prefer to write it where the 0 is on the right-hand side, so I'm sure you won't mind if I just put the equal 0 on the other side instead. You understand that's not changing anything. So now I'm going to complete the square like I've done in the past. So the first thing I'm going to do, this negative 10 is not the correct number. So I'm going to get rid of it by adding 10 to both sides. So far that gives me x squared plus 5x, leave a space, and that's going to equal 10. Now, it's time to do half the middle squared. All right, this is always trickier because it's not an even number. So I'm going to have a fraction. So I'm going to do half of this. Half of 5 is just 5 over 2. And then I'm going to have to square that. Okay, and that's what I use to complete the square. So if I square that, that's going to be 25 over 4. I'm just squaring both of those. So I'm going to add 25 fourths. And I have to add it to both sides of the equation. That is the biggest mistake every year. Students will add it on the left and they will forget to add it on the right. You have to keep that balance. Okay, so now let's definitely use our shortcuts. In fact, let's try to go straight to the binomial squared this time. So I want to go straight to this, something squared. So of course I will have x. Because of the plus right here, I know it's going to be plus. Now the number that goes here is this, half the middle. All right, that's what's going to go right here. So that's why I'm going to definitely have 5 over 2 right there. Now over here, you know, I can do this by hand because I'm a big boy, but I could also use a calculator, which is what I'm going to do right now. So 10 plus 25 over 4. Okay, that's 65 fourths. Okay, so that is the answer for problem number 11. Okay, we've completed the square. All right, problem number 12. So first of all, I'm sure you won't mind if I move the equal 0 over to the right-hand side. I'm just more comfortable with it over there. Okay. The next thing I need to do, the leading coefficient, I need to get rid of that. So I'm going to divide everything by 4, all 4 terms. So I'm going to divide by 4 here, 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 and here. So that is going to give me x squared minus 2x plus 1 is equal to 0. Now, the number 1 is not the correct number that I need to complete the square. So I'm going to move it out of the way. Just get it out of there by subtracting it from both sides. That's going to leave me with x squared minus 2x, leave a space, and that's equal to negative 1. Now it's time to complete the square. So I'm going to go half of the middle, and then I'll square it. So half of this is the number 1. And then if I square that, that's the number that completes the square, half the middle squared. But 1 squared is still 1, so I'm going to put a plus 1 here. And I'm not going to forget, my goodness, I'm not going to forget, oh, now I feel like an idiot. I said this was not the correct number that completes the square. But then I did all this, and it was a 1. I didn't notice that it actually was the right number in the first place. So I feel silly, but you know what? I could go back and edit this video, and it would be like that never happened. But I'm not going to do that. I want you to see what I did. So notice, On this problem, I don't need to move the 1 out of the way because actually this is the correct number that completes the square. So always check that. If I do half of the middle, half of this is 1. If I square it, I'm going to get 1. So this is already the correct number that completes the square. So I don't need to change it. So I can go straight to the next part where I write this as something squared. So of course it will be x minus what? Half the middle. It will be x minus 1. All right, also 1 times 1 is 1. Square root of that is another way of thinking of what this number will be. Okay, interesting. I need to make the leading coefficient go away. That needs to be gone. I have a denominator of 3. So really the question is, how do I make a denominator of 3 go away? Well, you multiply by 3. That's the key. So I'm going to multiply everything by 3. That way these 3's will cancel each other out. And the 1 is not relevant. So that's going to leave me with x squared minus 18x plus, what's that going to be? Plus 72 is equal to 0. So let's see. Well, 72 is not even a perfect square, so I know that that's not the right number. So I'm definitely going to move this out of the way by subtracting 72 from both sides. Okay, so that's going to leave me with x squared minus 18x. Leave a space here, and that's equal to negative 72. Now it's time to complete the square by doing half the middle squared. So half the middle is 9. 9 squared is 81. So 81 is the number that completes the square. So I will do plus 81. Please remember to do it on the right-hand side as well. The most common mistake when you're completing the square is to only add the number on the left. So now I should be able to write this trinomial as a binomial squared. So let's just go straight to binomial squared this time. So I know it's going to be x, of course. Because of the minus, I know it's going to be minus. And see how I have 9 squared? So this is going to be 9. Okay? So this is going to be 9. So that's the answer for number 13. Oh, that's it. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. Go ahead and click here in the red apple to watch the next video. Click in the green apple to subscribe, or click the yellow apple for the full playlist.